I turned instantly towards the direction of the sound, and to my amazement saw a white-haired man sitting on the opposite side of the room, gazing at me with the utmost composure. I am not a coward nor a believer in ghosts or illusions, and yet that sight froze me where I stood. It had no supernatural appearance, on the contrary, was a plain ordinary flesh-and-blood man. But the weather, the experiences of the day, the weird inclement night, had all conspired to strain my nerves to the highest point of tension, and I trembled from head to foot. Noting this, the stranger said pleasantly, "Quiet yourself, my dear sir. You have nothing to fear. Be seated." I obeyed mechanically, and regaining in a few moments some semblance of composure, took a mental inventory of my stranger. Who is he? What is he? How did he enter without my notice? And why? What is his business? Were all the questions that flashed into my mind in quick succession, and quickly flashed out unanswered. The stranger sat eyeing me composedly, even pleasantly, as if waiting for me to reach some conclusion regarding himself. At last I surmised, he is a maniac who has found his way here by methods peculiar to the insane, and my personal safety demands that I use him discreetly. "Very good," he remarked, as though reading my thoughts. "As well think that as anything else. But why are you here? What is your business?" I asked. "You have made and lost a wager," he said. "You have committed an act of folly in making positive statements regarding a matter about which you know nothing, a very common failing, by the way, on the part of mankind, and concerning what I wish first to set you straight." The ironical coolness with which he said this provoked me, and I hastily rejoined, "You are impertinent. I must ask you to leave my house at once." "Very well," he answered, "but if you must insist upon this, I shall, on behalf of Cicero, claim the stake of your voluntary wager, which means that I must first, by natural though violent means, release your soul from your body." So saying, he arose, drew from an inner pocket a long, keen knife, the blade of which quiveringly glistened as he laid it upon the table. Moving his chair so as to be within easy reach of the gleaming weapon, he sat down and again regarded me with the same quiet composure I had noted, and which was fast dispelling my first impression concerning his sanity. I was not prepared for this strange action. In truth, I was not prepared for anything. My mind was confused concerning the whole night's doings, and I was unable to reason clearly or consecutively, or even to satisfy myself what I did think, if indeed I thought at all. The sensation of fear, however, was fast leaving me. There was something reassuring in my unbidden guest's perfect ease of manner, and the mild, though searching gaze of his eyes, which were wonderful in their expression. I began to observe his personal characteristics, which impressed me favorably, and yet were extraordinary. He was nearly 6 feet tall and perfectly straight, well proportioned, with no tendency either to leanness or obesity. But his head was an object from which I could not take my eyes. Such a head surely I had never seen before on mortal shoulders. The chin, as seen through his silver beard, was rounded and well developed, the mouth straight with pleasant lines about it, the jaws square, and like the mouth indicated decision, the eyes deep set and arched with heavy eyebrows, and the whole surmounted by a forehead so vast, so high, that it was almost a deformity, and yet it did not impress me unpleasantly. It was the forehead of a scholar, a profound thinker, a deep student. The nose was inclined to aquiline and quite large. The contour of the head and face impressed me as indicating a man of learning, one who had given a lifetime to experimental as well as speculative thought. His voice was mellow, clear, and distinct, always pleasantly modulating and soft, never loud nor unpleasant in the least degree. One remarkable feature I must not fail to mention, his hair. This, while thin and scant upon the top of his head, was long and reached to his shoulders. His beard was of unusual length, descending almost to his waist. His hair, eyebrows, and beard were all of singular whiteness and purity, almost transparent, a silvery whiteness that seemed an aureolar sheen in the glare of the gaslight. What struck me as particularly remarkable was that his skin looked as soft and smooth as that of a child. There was not a blemish in it. His age was a puzzle none could guess. Stripped of his hair, or the color of it changed, He might be 25, given a few wrinkles. He might be 90. Taken altogether, I had never seen his like, nor anything approaching his like, and for an instant there was a faint suggestion to my mind that he was not of this earth, but belonged to some other planet. I now fancy he must have read my impressions of him as these ideas shaped themselves in my brain, and that he was quietly waiting for me to regain a degree of self-possession that would allow him to disclose the purpose of his visit. He was first to break the silence. "I see that you are not disposed to pay your wager any more than I am to collect it, so we will not discuss that. I admit that my introduction tonight was abrupt, but you cannot deny that you challenged me to appear. I was not clear upon the point and said so. Your memory is at fault," he continued. "If you cannot recall your experiences of the day just past, did you not attempt to interest yourself in modern book lore, to fix your mind in turn upon history, chemistry, botany, poetry, and general literature? And all these failing, did you not deliberately challenge Cicero to a practical demonstration of an old apothegm of his that has survived for centuries, and of your own free will did not you make a wager that, as an admirer of Cicero's, I am free to accept?" To all this I could but silently assent. "Very good, then. We will not pursue this subject further, as it is not relevant to my purpose, which is to acquaint you with a narrative of unusual interest upon certain conditions, with which, if you comply, you will not only serve yourself, but me as well." "Please, name the conditions," I said. "They are simple enough," he answered. "The narrative I speak of is in manuscript. I will produce it in the near future, and my design is to read it aloud to you, or to allow you to read it to me, as you may select. Further, my wish is that during the reading you shall interpose any objection or question that you deem proper. This reading will occupy many evenings, and I shall of necessity be with you often. When the reading is concluded, we shall seal the package securely, and I shall leave you forever. You will then deposit the manuscript in some safe place, and let it remain for 30 years. When this period has elapsed, I wish you to publish this history to the world." "Your conditions seem easy," I said, after a few seconds' pause. "They are certainly very simple. Do you accept?" I hesitated, for the prospect of giving myself up to a succession of interviews with this extraordinary and mysterious personage seemed to require consideration. He evidently divined my thoughts, for rising from his chair he said abruptly, "Let me have your answer now." I debated the matter no further, but answered, "I accept conditionally." "Name your conditions," the guest replied. "I will either publish the work or induce some other man to do so." "Good," he said. "I will see you again," with a polite bow, and turning to the door, which I had previously locked, he opened it softly, and with a quiet good night disappeared in the hallway. I looked after him with bewildered senses, but a sudden impulse caused me to glance toward the table, when I saw that he had forgotten his knife. With the view of returning this, I reached to pick it up, but my fingertips no sooner touched the handle than a sudden chill shivered along my nerves. Not as an electric shock, but rather as a sensation of extreme cold, was the current that ran through me in an instant. Rushing into the hallway to the landing of the stairs, I called after the mysterious being, "You have forgotten your knife!" But beyond the faint echo of my voice, I heard no sound. The phantom was gone. A moment later I was at the foot of the stairs and had thrown open the door. A street lamp shed an uncertain light in front of the house. I stepped out and listened intently for a moment, but not a sound was audible. If indeed I except the beating of my own heart, which throbbed so wildly that I fancied I heard it. No footfall echoed from the deserted streets. All was silent as a churchyard, and I closed and locked the door softly, tiptoed my way back to my room, and sank collapsed into an easy-chair. I was more than exhausted. I quivered from head to foot, not with cold, but with a strange nervous chill that found intense expression in my spinal column and seemed to flash up and down my back, vibrating like a feverish pulse. This active pain was succeeded by a feeling of frozen numbness, and I sat I know not how long, trying to tranquilize myself and think temperately of the night's occurrence. By degrees I recovered my normal sensations, and directing my will in the channel of sober reasoning, I said to myself, there can be no mistake about his visit, for his knife is here as a witness to the fact. So much is sure, and I will secure that testimony at all events. With this reflection I turned to the table, but to my astonishment I discovered that the knife had disappeared. It needed but this miracle to start the perspiration in great cold beads from every pore. My brain was in a whirl, and reeling into a chair, I covered my face with my hands. How long I sat in this posture I do not remember. I only know that I began to doubt my own sanity, and wondered if this were not the way people became deranged. Had not my peculiar habits of isolation, irregular and intense study, erratic living, all conspired to unseat reason? Surely here was every ground to believe so, and yet I was able still to think consistently and hold steadily to a single line of thought. Insane people cannot do that, I reflected, and gradually the tremor and excitement wore away, when I had become calmer and more collected, and my sober judgment said, go to bed, sleep just as long as you can, hold your eyelids down, and when you are awake, refreshed as you will, think out the whole subject at your leisure. I arose and threw open the shutters. I did not dream, at least I could not afterwards remember my dream, if I had one, but I recollect thinking that somebody struck 10 distinct blows on my door, which seemed to me to be of metal and very sonorous. These 10 blows in my semi-conscious state I counted. I lay very quiet for a time, collecting my thoughts and noting various objects about the room, until my eye caught the dial of a French clock on the mantel. It was a few minutes past 10, and the blows I had heard were the strokes of the hammer upon the gong in the clock. The sun was shining into the room, which was quite cold, for the fire had gone out. I arose, dressed myself quickly, and after thoroughly laving my face and hands in ice-cold water, felt considerably refreshed. Before going out to breakfast, while looking around the room for a few things which I wanted to take with me, I espied upon the table a long white hair. This was indeed a surprise, for I had about concluded that my adventure of the previous night was a species of waking nightmare, the result of overworked brain and weakened body. But here was tangible evidence to the contrary, an assurance that my mysterious visitor was not a fancy or a dream, and his parting words, "I will see you again," reoccurred to me with singular effect. He will see me again, very well. I will preserve this evidence of his visit for future use. I wound the delicate filament into a little coil, folded it carefully in a bit of paper, and consigned it to a corner in my pocketbook, though not without some misgiving that it too might disappear, as did the knife. The strange experience of that night had a good effect on me. I became more regular in all my habits, took abundant sleep and exercise, was more methodical in my modes of study and reasoning, and in a short time found myself vastly improved in every way, mentally and physically. The days went fleeting into weeks, the weeks into months, and while the form and figure of the white-haired stranger were seldom absent from my mind, he came no more. And yet that sight froze me where I stood. It had no supernatural appearance, on the contrary, was a plain ordinary flesh-and-blood man. But the weather, the experiences of the day, the weird inclement night, had all conspired to strain my... I turned instantly towards the direction of the sound, and to my amazement saw a white-haired man sitting on the opposite side of the room, gazing at me with the utmost composure. I am not a coward nor a believer in ghosts or illusions. My nerves to the highest point of tension, and I trembled from head to foot. Noting this, the stranger said pleasantly, "Quiet yourself, my dear sir. You have nothing to fear. Be seated." I obeyed mechanically, and regaining in a few moments some semblance of composure, the stranger sat eyeing me composedly, even pleasantly, as if waiting for me to reach some conclusion regarding himself. At last I surmised, he is a maniac who has found his way here by methods peculiar to the insane, and my personal took a mental inventory of my stranger. Who is he? What is he? How did he enter without my notice? And why? What is his business? Were all the questions that flashed into my mind in quick succession and quickly flashed out unanswered.